I think a lot about the fact that I am part of the last generation on Earth that will remember life before the internet. Even if I leave my phone and I go outside, I'm still thinking about my phone. I'm still thinking about what's in my inbox, what messages are coming up. And I miss the freedom of the mind.
In the world of AI, are we actually going to be leaning into connecting with other people more? Or is it going to be easier to disconnect? Because I feel it's going to be easier to disconnect.
It is, and it will be easier to disconnect. But I think the longing for human connection will grow. The story that my dad was told as a young man of from the golf course that he worked at from, wealthier men that were go to college, get an education, get a job, buy a car, get a house, get a family, that's how you do it. My dad did follow that, but what did it lead to? What does that look like for me now as I'm approaching the same age that he was when he first saw the ocean?
You're living life, you're having all these different, you have your family, your friend, work and this, and your partner and this. And what do you think life has designed you for?
Ugh, what a question.
She's a designer who previously worked on Google Maps, mapping the unmapped, built tools for impact, and redefines how design shapes the world. Lauren Celenza. Hi, I'm Topaz Adidas. I'm the founder of the Emmy Award-winning series, The And. The And has been an incredible journey for the last 12 years. We've brought in over 1,250 pairs to have incredible conversations, and I've learned a lot. Through this work, I've had the privilege of witnessing the bold, the beautiful, and the heart-wrenching, the conversations that reveal us. I've watched, I've listened, I've learned, and now I'm ready to share. David S. Viscott has a great quote that always inspires me. The purpose of life is to find your gift. The work of life is to develop your gift. And the meaning of life is to give it away. And what I've seen from my 48 years on this planet, through incredible experiences, is that life shapes us. Things happen to us, and we interpret those things, and that shapes us into offerings we can offer others. So the expedition that I'm embarking upon, that I'm inviting you to join, is a journey of conversations. I'm going to speak to people that I find incredible. I'm going to be asking them questions that reveal their life's journey. What are the hidden gifts and challenges and offerings that they have? And on this journey, we will uncover the message the universe has written into your life, for yourself and for others. Are you listening to what your life is telling you? I don't know where we'll go. I'm just going to be very transparent about it. And that's why I welcome you to this journey that we're calling Getting Under the Skin, or GUTS for short. Thank you, and let's see where we go. Hey, beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of Getting Under the Skin. Today we have Lauren Celenza. I'm so excited to have her on because I first met her at this event we did in Romania called Unfinished. She was a moderator. And the questions she asked were so on point and were so nuanced and insightful that even the person being asked the question, I think, missed the nuance. She is a great question asker, and I love questions. And so speaking to her, I realized her breadth of work, her depth of work, and we do find the connection between her gift and how that was shaped by life. She's a software designer based out of Seattle. Her work has been featured in Fast Company, in Forbes, and NBC News, and in These Times. She's product launched with Google Maps, Code for America, and the World Resources Institute. She's really focused on technology. She's a guide, if you will, a translator of taking technology to humans and human interaction, which obviously that's a place where her and I just had incredible conversations. And I wanted to bring her in to GUTS because I wanted to know what shaped this woman, what shaped this soul, what is it that she experienced that gave her this gift. So I invite you to a conversation about meaning, about humanity, about technology, and about what connects us all. Welcome to another episode of GUTS. All right, we're in. Thank you for jumping into this thing with me. How was when did you get back from Romania?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited about this conversation today. Romania was great. Very different vibe than last year. Different lineup of speakers. More talks on AI and the implications of it. More talks on loneliness, which was super fascinating. It was great. And then there was a rainstorm also, which that was fun. I was like in the middle interviewing some of the, speakers, and like this like rainstorm came down. I'm like, we're going to keep going. Like, let's just listen to it, And so we had these moments of pause throughout the interview where we just like listened to the rain. It was great.
Do you think there was a connection between why were they talking so much about AI now versus last year? And why were they talking so much about loneliness this year than last year?
Yeah. Are the two related is the question. I think they are. I think globally over the last couple of years, AI has been the buzz, right, across media, across a lot of countries, lots of fear around it, lots of excitement around it, lots of uncertainty. And I think that like we're all trying to make sense of it. The word that kept coming up for me during the festival was the word grasp. Like we're trying to grasp towards like, what is this future? What are we creating? What's happening? How do I grasp onto relationships in my life when I'm feeling lonely? Like it was just this yearning, this longing that I felt, not only from the speakers that came and talked about their work, but from the audience. You could feel it. You could hear it in their questions. You could feel the energy of that. And I think that AI is sort of a big topic when it comes to what are we grasping onto here? What really is the future, and how are we shaping this? So I think that was why it was a big topic.
And then you had the piece that you talk about that's getting etched out over time of a baby. It's just how much more symbolic or metaphoric do you want?
I know.
We're shaping this AI that's coming to being that.
Yeah.
Right? And
yeah.
Well, thanks for joining. I'm excited to have this convo. I have a thesis that I want to play out with, and I don't want to articulate it. I kind of want to see if we get there between your work and kind of what I'm exploring in this podcast. And this is really our third interview on the podcast. So we're very much in early stages. It's very transparent, as I told you. But I kind of want to play between your work and your talent and where that comes from with this thesis I have about, that life shapes us for certain experiences and really ultimately some gifts to offer. But before we do that, I just want to ask you a question, because the thing that like really got how I really noticed you was how you moderated conversations at last year's Unfinished Festival. And I thought you asked some incredible questions. And, I'm a big fan of questions. And how did this year of your moderating ability change compared to last year? Because I know that this has been like a new space that you've been wanting to explore, that you are exploring and holding the space of moderation and, inquiry. So how was that experience for you? How did you feel that you changed in that year?
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, I'll say that I just love asking questions. I love meeting new people and asking them questions about their experience, about their work, about their life, about their perspective. For a long time, in a lot of my other work as a designer and working in the tech industry, there's so much of an emphasis on solutions. And I've been longing for questions. And I've been longing to express my own curiosity, and with the hope that, that could tap into an audience's curiosity as well. And I think it does. And that's maybe the biggest thing that felt like a change this year, is like really kind of feeling the energy of the audience and sort of seeing like, okay, I'm coming into this conversation with like some initial set of questions based on some research I've done about this person. But in the moment, things change, brainstorms happen, right? And, you can feel sort of the energy of the audience. And I think that I was more maybe adaptive to like what was going on and changing my questions on the fly and being okay with that. And just seeing where the moment took us.
Compared to last year, you feel
compared
that
to last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it takes some time and comfort to like, get practice in it and be able to improvise, right? And be flexible in that. And the more I do it, I think the more that I'm learning to let go and be okay with improvising. And that's part of what curiosity and questions is, right? Is embracing the uncertainty of the moment.
Where do you think this curiosity comes from in you?
I think it comes from a deep unsatisfaction with the way that things are in the world. And, anytime I'm starting to feel frustrated about a situation or life or angry about something, I actually am like, wait a minute, why is it this way? What if it could be something else? what if we imagine it in a different way? And as soon as I shift from that place of like questions, I feel more alive. And so that's something that I noticed myself doing even as a kid, like when there were just frustrations around me and I was just like, why is it this way? And that feeling of that expression, like actually making me more aware and more alive within myself. I think I've just sort of held on to even, into adulthood.
So does that come from the article that you wrote? Is it how deindustrialization, was it affected my family? Took my father from me? What was it?
Yeah. The title was How Deindustrialization Shaped My Working Class Family. The original title for it, though, was Sugar Water.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about, one question that you clearly talk about in that article, which I think was just beautiful, because I think it elucidates what you're speaking now, is that it seems like there's an anger of why things are, and then you ask the question, why? So in case of your father, why is he working so hard? And yet I don't see him much, and yet the company he's working for now, which turned out to be Sugar Water, before it was another a manufacturing company, but that seems to be always changing, or it changed a few times. Regardless of what the company was, there was so much importance to his work there because he had to pay the bills, support the family. And I thought it was really beautiful how the first time you guys traveled to go down to the beach, of which you'd done a year before with your friend from school, your father at that point was 40, never saw the ocean. And you get to the ocean and you see the Sugar Water, the brand that's on his shirt, that's on the hat, that's all around your house. It's where Dad's always at. The product he makes is left there as trash on the floor. That must have pissed you off. Like, he works so hard, I get no time with my dad for him to work on something that gets left on the floor.
Yeah, I was incredibly angry, and that was just one scene out of many where, you see sugar water bottles like thrown on the ground, right? And pollution and things like that. And I think that was a moment that I was like, what the hell? Like, what is this? Why? Like, why? Yes, he's trying to pay the bills. He's trying to support his family, like so many of us. But where is family if he's always at work? I think what I found really fascinating and continuing to write about this and doing some research on it and interviewing my family on it is just like the story that my dad was told as a young man of like, from the golf course that he worked at, from, wealthier men that were like, yeah, like go to college, get an education, get a job, buy a car, get a house, get a family. And that's how you do it. And realizing like, okay, well, my dad did follow that, but what did it lead to? And what does that look like for me now as I'm approaching the same age that he was when he first saw the ocean? And it just feels like I'm seeing the same distance and separateness and family relationships across generations in the U.S.
Is it because of deindustrialization, or is it because of something else, or what do you think that's?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of, lots of things, but a couple of things that come to mind for me most is, at the time that this article takes place, like, yes, deindustrialization was happening at that time and place. But now, I live in a separate part of the opposite part of the country from my parents. And with the internet as well, like it's often difficult to feel like I can connect with them and see them often because we live at such a big distance. And, we don't always share the same political views. And so it's just like difficult even today to grasp, going back to that word grasp that relationship. And I think I feel a lot of grief around this, right? Because as a child, I felt like I didn't get a lot of time with my dad. And now as an adult, I'm like, well, now it's even harder to try to, get time with my parents. And I wasn't expecting that distance to sort of happen, but here we are. So
when you say distance, you mean physical distance or emotional distance? Or?
I think it's been both over the last few years. There's the physical distance, obviously, with the different locations, but emotional distance as well, that with things that have been happening politically in the U.S. over the last decade, It's been difficult to connect on certain topics or I think that what I've come to, though, is that regardless of our political views, that it is a radical act to love your family members that may have a different political view than you do. It's a radical act. And I am really enjoying my relationship with them now. Like, I feel like we've gotten to a better place. And yes, you know, setting boundaries or accountability is a part of love. You know, going back to Bell Hook's All About Love book, you know, she talks a lot about that. But it is a radical act to embrace, like, yeah, we had very different experiences and also similar ones, and we don't have the same view, but I will love you anyway.
That's beautiful. I'm going to yes and it and say, I have a theory about why the universe is designed family. Because you can't really get rid of family. Friends can come and go, and, you know, if you fall out of harmony or resonance with your friends, well, you find other friends that you're in harmony or resonance at that point in time who have the same opinions as you do or the same sentiments or interests. But family, you know, you're going to see them in the holidays or not. And even if you don't see them at all, they're still in your operating system. They're still in the back. There's still a connection. And what I think is a beautiful design of the universe is that the family is there because they will inevitably not resonate with you at all times. They will not harmonize. And that requires you to then find a harmony and to find, and maybe not even harmony, but to find acceptance, which is rooted in love, right? So,
yeah.
So in some sense, maybe, you know, my sibling and I do not share opinions, but I'll never be able to get rid of my sibling. And we shared this many years together. We have this, you know, we cannot, and I had to find a way, and they have to find a way for us to accept one another. And if we didn't have the family, then we wouldn't have the opportunity to practice love in such a degree.
Yeah. And I think embracing those differences and understanding them and sitting with them and being patient with them, like, that's depth of love. You know, there's a lot of depth to love that we don't often talk about. And I've just culturally, we don't often talk about the depth of, like, embracing, you know, the differences.
But tell me that, because I don't see it as depth. I see it as like a practice, like a muscle that you're strengthening or getting better skilled at. How is it depth?
Yeah, I suppose it is a muscle, but I also see it as, like, depth in terms of depth of perspective. Like, okay, so my parents don't share the same political views as I do. Let me go back to asking questions. Why? Why is that? Right? And then you keep sort of unpacking the layers of that, and you start to realize, oh, wow, like, yeah, there's an experience here that maybe is misunderstood or not heard or whatever the case may be, and how can I show love towards that? So that's the depth that I have learned over the years with my family.
Two things come up for me. One is, wow, how can politics really get in the way of family? And it seems like so obvious, but at the same time, it's not so obvious. Like, this is family. This is your blood. This is hopefully people that support you and raised you and took care of you. And yet, how do we allow things that are kind of outside the periphery of the home then affect the home? How does that happen? And then, yeah, how does that happen? But it seems, in some sense, it seems obvious. But there's another sense, if I look at it, it's like, it's kind of surprising. But it happens all the time.
It happens all the time.
And not just now. Not just now. My dad was raised in former Republic of Yugoslavia. And he says that when they would go to school, they would teach them, this is when Tito, communism, that Tito was the father. And if they heard their parents speaking poorly about Tito, they should tell their teachers. And they would be able to know if at their home. So the parents were very scared about speaking their tone because they knew at the school that the kids were listening. If you spoke against Tito, against the communist regime, those kids would tell the teachers, and then you'd be in trouble.
Wow.
So even then, in that, you know, it's even that split up the family, right? The politics split up the family. So I don't think it's a totally new thing now, but it does feel very prevalent now. At least it feels very prevalent now in the polarization of America.
Yeah, and I actually think the physical distance comes into play here too, because one factor of it for me was, you know, there's lots of different, the U.S. is huge land-wise, but also culturally, right? There's different pockets throughout it. And I think, like, for me, around 2016, especially in 2021, when the insurrection happened, like, I had friends who were like, why are you still talking to your family who supports this? And, you know, and it's like, whoa, So it really throws you for a loop when you have like friends asking you this. And I got really confused, honestly. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Like, and this is why I go back to saying, like, I do believe that like, it's a radical act to love those that maybe have different views than you do. And it was difficult. And that was kind of a really big factor for why I think I was confused and just angry, and politics got in the way.
You know, you say radical act. The thing that comes up for me is, you know, it's a radical act, like having kids to begin with.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just thinking about how much as parents, you give to especially when they're, you know, before 3 years old, you know, in the first 2 years, it's like in the trenches, they're really dependent, and how much, especially my wife, really gives. I'm not sure if it's radical, but it's definitely extreme. Well, okay, let me ask you, so I'm not going to be able to speak about your work as best as you can, but there's two things that you've done that are very impressive, and I would say give both of them one word to describe what they are. Navigation. Yeah. One is 2016 to 2021, 22, Google Maps, translating Google Maps for different populations, different languages, where you can say it better than I will, and I'd love for you to just give us an overview of that. But at the same time, for last year's tax year, the tax code for Arizona and New York State, for that now saved over $90 million so people can file their own taxes, which we all know is the biggest headache in the world. I mean, to even try on your own, I've tried it on QuickBooks once, or Intuit, tax, you know, but both of them, you're making things navigable, complex things navigable. So can you tell us just a bit overview of what that work was? And what I want to know about it is, what do you think makes you so good at that kind of work?
Yeah. I think what they both share in common is the word navigation. And regardless of what the context is for these two technologies, it's really about navigating the relationship between human and technology. That's really what it is, right? So for the tax project, as part of, my work with Code for America, I designed the New York and Arizona state filing portion of like the IRS direct file pilot, which is the free tax tool to file your, taxes directly with the IRS for the first time in U.S. history. The pilot is now expanding into this tax season, which is really exciting to see. And I think for that project in particular, what navigation meant was what if the experience of filing your taxes in the U.S. could be a positive one? Having it be free is the first.
It just sounds to me like an oxymoron. Filing taxes could be pleasant. What are you talking about?
It does. It does sound like an oxymoron. But if we can make it a more positive one, then we can establish a stronger relationship to it and where the taxes are going, and whether we agree with it or not, or if we want to vote differently, right? It's everything is sort of on the basis of taxes if you really think about it, for I think any country. And that's like the biggest lesson I learned from that project. And so, thinking about helping people navigate through the language of it. How can you make it designed with plain language as opposed to all this jargon that doesn't make any sense? Or helping people understand what comes next, give them expectations of it. Helping people understand where they can get the most of their refunds, what tax credits are available to them. Like all those things were a huge part of creating the navigation of it so that people can establish a healthier relationship and maybe a healthier trust with government as well. So, navigation.
So are you saying that by simplifying it, the user or the person utilizing that can be asking themselves different questions instead of asking the question of, how do I get through this? Now they can ask themselves, am I happy with my taxes are being spent?
Yes. Now we can get to the next question. Yep. And that's what navigation is. It's not one step or one destination and you're done. You're navigating through a journey of the whole thing. And so this pilot was really, I think the biggest lesson I learned is that this pilot was really critical to removing the barrier of that first step to make it easy and accessible and free to file your taxes so that you can get to the next question, which may be, where are my taxes going? And do I agree with this or not?
Mm-hmm. No, what comes up for me is like, does the government actually want that? Don't they like it being complicated? Like on some level, isn't it better when things are complicated so you're distracted by different questions? You're distracted by questions that are not empowering questions?
There is a lot of technology that does that, whether it's, I think for government or for industry. But, with this project, what was really important is to make it easy and make it clear, given that for so long it hasn't been. And that's been the big, barrier for people.
And then the other one that you spent a lot more time on, which was with Google Maps. And can you just tell me about that? But then and then I want to ask, what makes you good at these two jobs?
Yeah. So with Google Maps, during my time there, my role was to think about redesigning Google Maps to make it more inclusive for motorbikes and informal public transit systems across the world. So particularly in Indonesia, in India, in Nigeria, in Brazil, and other parts of South America and Southeast Asia.
Informal meaning what? Like bikes and walking and subway?
So there are many public transit systems across the world that you may not know the bus time. You may not know exactly where the stop is. It's not exactly mapped out. It's a little ad hoc, and it can create a really confusing experience for people trying to navigate through that. So, I think the biggest lesson there was that in a post-colonial world, myself and a lot of the people that I directly worked with were based in the U.S., in California and Seattle. And we were tasked with trying to make Google Maps inclusive for other parts of the world that we had no relation to. And so the question here was like, how do you build relationships and co-create and bring in local guides and communities and local tech and data startups who live in these areas and work together and try to rebalance the relationship. And, the process wasn't perfect. And I kind of, looking back on it, I'm like, wow, there's lots of things I would have done differently. But for the most part, it did serve as an interesting kind of prototype for how you can start to build technology with people as opposed to building it for them, And
that's beautiful.
I think what was really interesting on the navigation side was that myself and the people I worked with in the US, when they were experiencing this and building those relationships, they would time and time again come up to me and say wow, okay, this experience helped me realize that my work means more than just meeting the bottom line. It helped me reconnect not only to the how, but why I'm here, where my work is going, who's impacted by it.
How did you how did that happen? What did they see in order to articulate that?
Yeah, it was like traveling to various regions of the world, meeting people face to face, actually getting lost on the back of a motorbike, trying to use Google Maps and it didn't work. And so, you have engineers getting lost on the back of the bike and asking, local people for where to go. And, just seeing it face to face, feeling it, and then continuing those relationships throughout the process, whether it's over video chat or meeting them again, just continuing to build and foster that relationship. That was the thing. And, I think a lot about alienation of labor and, it's difficult to know sometimes in the chaos of working in industry, where is my work going? What is the final result? How is it impacting things, especially with technology, right? Because you never really know until it's out there. But until you launch something at scale, do you realize all the, various nuances of things or what new problems are created from technology? Because I believe every piece of technology it may solve some things, but it also creates new problems. And so it's difficult to know every one of those in the process of making it. And the first step, though, to trying to understand that is to build those relationships early and often.
And the idea behind that building of relationships is so that you have a clear way of communicating as you build it and knowing what's working, what's not, and filling in your blind spots.
Yeah, filling in your blind spots, making sure you're actually building something that's going to be useful and safe and accessible, or maybe getting an understanding of what new problems might be created from it, an inkling of it as you're, working on it. What's interesting to me is that so much of, I think, technology and just business in general focuses on efficiency. right? What can we make more efficient? What can we optimize? And I think in the process of going for efficiency, we kind of trip over ourselves and we lack information, or we struggle to retain information, or we don't take the time to build those relationships up front. And we end up actually creating a more inefficient and ineffective process in the long run by tripping over ourselves, right? So going back to navigation, it's like, if we could just take a moment to invest in relationships, we'll actually end up with an outcome that can get a little closer to being more effective and more efficient.
Mm-hmm. What I hear when you say that is the effort to be efficient sometimes makes it efficient, but not necessarily effective. So what's the point of being highly efficient if you're not being effective?
Exactly.
And effectiveness, which means to me, like, what problem are you solving? Meaning, like, are people using this? Is this actually helping someone? You could have a highly efficient tool that people don't use, so you're not really being effective because you're not moving the needle.
Point? What's the point?
And then what's effective now may not be effective later because things change, and you don't know if things change if you're not in communication with the people who you're trying to serve.
Exactly.
Have you found that you're in the room with the team or with the shareholders, stakeholders, people who are invested in the success of the project, and you feel, yeah, this is my lane, this is where I'm really contributing?
I think that when I'm in these rooms, I tend to, I feel like I've maybe always been this way. And it may be because growing up, I felt like I wasn't always heard or seen or, listened to, that I'm always asking the question, like, where's the imbalance here? What's imbalanced about this? So in the example of Google Maps, the imbalance there was like, the power dynamics here are quite imbalanced. We've got a team in the US trying to build something for a completely different country. Like, that's out of balance. For the IRS direct file, free tax filing tool, like the imbalance there was like, well, the perception in relationship to taxes is a horrible one. So how can we make this a easier, accessible, friendlier relationship, right? So it really comes down to when it comes to the human or the community and the technology, where is the imbalance and what needs to be sort of corrected in that way, in some way. So that's the way that I try to approach it. And what's interesting to me is no matter what piece of technology I'm working on or the context of it, like there's always an immediate thing that comes up with that question. And I think the thing that I long for the most is to have more tech makers ask that question.
Wow, that's a great question. That's a great question. When I spent some time with the Maori communities of, with the Maori community in New Zealand, my wife and I did a project, and we brought, turned out to be family now, Maori family, to Mexico for a project. They told us that when we first came to them with the idea, we were physically in the same space, and my wife and I came up to them. They said that the first thing they looked at was not what the project was. They came to look at the feminine-masculine balance.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't just me who came to them with the idea. It was my wife and I. And then they look at how her and I engage with each other to see if there's a balance. And that was a huge learning for me. And that's what I hear here is you're saying, where's the imbalance? And I think us looking at when we're constructing something, is this balance? Do we have, and where's the imbalance? I mean, the imbalance, there's always probably an imbalance. There's probably, I don't know, just even
always.
Asking that question ensures that you're going to create the balance. I guess the first one is, where's the imbalance? And the second one, is there a will, social political will or the corporate will to adjust that imbalance? Or is it in the benefit of the entity to maintain that imbalance, right?
Yeah, a lot of times in industry, corporations can benefit a lot from an imbalance.
When you look at right now the spaces that you're exposed to in the world of AI,
mm-hmm.
where and in the rooms that you find yourself in, which I don't really know what all those rooms are, but I know they're definitely more extensive than what the rooms I've been in. Where do you sense is the biggest imbalance that you've been noticing?
With AI in particular?
Yeah, because that is such a potent baby that we're creating right now. That is just so potent. And I think it's on everyone's mind. So just what have you seen as is there a starking imbalance that you've noticed, or that you've seen come up time and time again, or or a few different ones, or?
Yeah, there's so many. And I think a lot of them actually aren't necessarily new imbalances. They're like imbalances that have kind of always been there, but now that we're building this new technology, it's like taking those imbalances further. If you think about the creation of AI and what's happening with that, a lot of the money that is required for, building AI is, the data centers. There's a high cost in creating those data centers, expanding them. Who has the money to do that? Well, big tech does. Big tech has the resources. So a lot of the biggest imbalance I see is sort of the centralization of power in terms of who's creating the AI and who has the resources to do it. Another imbalance is the use cases for AI. So, a lot of generative AI in particular focuses on, write poetry for me or generate art for me. And those can be fun to use, or it could help you visualize, an idea you may have. But as a human, I want to write poetry. I want to create art. What if AI could help me do my laundry instead? So I feel like there's a little bit of an imbalance in terms of the use case for where we're placing AI in our lives.
So to go back to the thing that makes you good at it, it's because the question you ask is imbalance. That's what you think makes you good at the work you do.
Well, I mean, good is a loaded word, honestly, because
Maybe effective at what you do, or should I say efficient?
I think the biggest thing is it allows me to just see more, like see the opportunities and see where we could, work together to sort of figure out how to create balance in that relationship. Whether I do an effective or a good job of that, I don't know. I mean, honestly, working in tech is very tricky, because like I said, all technology can come with a solution and it can also create new problems. And so to say that I'm good at it, I mean, probably, but like also I have probably created new problems too with what I've built in the tech industry. So I'm always sort of looking at, what can I do to continue to ask that imbalance question, but how can I also reflect on like what I learned from various experiences to know what some of those problems have been or where they could emerge in future technology as well. So that self-reflection is a huge part, I think, of, the process of creating technology. Self-reflection within ourselves, yeah.
Do you have that? Do you have a process for that? Or is that kind of ad hoc? And
it is kind of ad hoc, to be honest. Yeah. There's sometimes there's sometimes where I'm good at it and I'm like tuned into it. And then there's other weeks where I'm like, holy hell, this week was so chaotic. Like I don't even know where I am. So, ad hoc meaning if I can tune into it and remember that it's important to self-reflect, I'll do it. But, there's weeks where it's difficult to do so.
Because what I found is if we don't have a process for the self-reflection, then we usually self-reflect when we hit the wall, when shit hit the fan, when something happens it's one reason why I think holidays or New Year's or some religious holidays are good because, because New Year's is often great. Thanksgiving, where basically New Year's is great because it's a new year and everyone usually, that's kind of a great way to create a catharsis for I'm going to take inventory from my last year, draw goals for the new year. And obviously it becomes cliche, but if you have, that helps you create like a process. It's a yearly process. In the Jewish tradition for, Yom Kippur, the high holiday, you take atonement for the year, you fast, and that's what I mean by religious. It's a process of, okay, that comes up, and regardless of how religious or not you are, but in the culture, it's take time to think for the year, right? And so that's what comes up for me is I don't do it, and I have a diary, and I've been writing a lot as a kid, but then as life got busier, more challenges, I write less in the book, and therefore I have less opportunity for self-reflection. So if I don't have a process, I usually only self-reflect when shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like
right.
To learn from that, but it's just natural. And I appreciate your honesty because you could also just bullshit and say that I have a process, but many of us,
yeah. In the process, I think it's okay to allow the process to change too. Like there's been moments where writing things down has helped me, and then there's times where it hasn't. And instead, I'll do voice notes to myself.
Right.
You know, sometimes I'll voice note things to myself or I'll text myself, which sounds kind of weird, but like honestly, using technology in that way actually helps me to like kind of have like a relationship with myself in a strange way. And I can read back on those things and do some self-reflection. So
it just makes me think we'll have an AI where you leave voice notes for yourself over the course of the year, and then the years say, AI, please tell me what I've learned this year. Or what should I have learned this year?
yeah, that's a powerful concept.
Yeah, I think navigation is interesting. It seemed that resonated with you about the two big projects that you've done. There's obviously more, but those are two substantial ones. And so a lot of that is how do you take this technology, or how do you take this and through technology make it navigable, whether it's IRS experiential, so it's more enjoyable and accessible. Looking at that, there's all this information, then you have to like design it in a way that's accessible or even enjoyable for the IRS, or Google Maps, like all this information, formal and informal, and make it accessible for the individual. But life is the same too. You're living life, you're having all these different, you have your family, your friends, the random person on the street, your work and this, and your partner and this, and how do you apply, do you apply any design processes or principles to that of your own life? And if not, like how do you navigate your own life?
I do try to go back to the question of where is the imbalance in my life? And right now, the imbalance I feel is that I'm going through a period of, pretty deep isolation. A lot of the work I do is remote. My family lives at a distance, like I mentioned before, across the country. And I'm also in a phase in life where it can be difficult to make new friends or retain friendships because everybody's life is changing. That feels like the biggest imbalance I'm navigating right now. But that's the question I lead with to try to navigate my own life.
Thing has changed because you're in a new age group, or because your friend community have stepped into a new phase, or because we're post-COVID, everyone's more remote, people are more distant. What do you mean?
Yeah.
What has changed?
I think, so for me, I'm 35 and COVID hit right after my 30th birthday. And, that age in life is where things really start to rapidly change. People have kids, people move, breakups, divorces, just life really starts to hit you at that age, and then it just kind of accelerates from there. And then at the same time, COVID hit while that was happening. And so I have a lot of, I guess, empathy for people in my age group as well, who probably maybe listening to this and nodding their heads like, yeah, like I've experienced that too, because it's been difficult to navigate those changing phases of life and also navigate within my own body. How do I go out again and engage with people after COVID? And I feel like I'm still trying to figure this one out. It's to the point where I'm like, I get more anxiety if I'm in big crowds than I used to. And maybe that's aging too, but I do think COVID played a huge role with it as well.
I wonder about that too, because I was just in New York, and I think, where did I go? Whenever I'm in a concert type environment or anything where there's just more than 100 people, I find myself going to the edges, like where there's nobody behind.
Yes.
Like I need space, and I wonder if I'm 48 now, and I wonder if that my age. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. Or is it COVID? I think it's definitely COVID. I mean, spending 1 or 2 years where you're rarely with more than 5 people, And for me, and I remember coming out of COVID, being physically in front of somebody for more than an hour and feeling exhausted, because I realized it's not just what I see on the screen that's engaging with the other person. It's my whole body. I'm picking up all the energy on the body, the whole posture from head to toe, and my whole body is taking in their whole body information. Like, I really believe that when we communicate, like, it's not just our eyes and our ears and our mouth that are communicating. We're ingesting all the energy. I just found it a lot more exhausting. I mean, when I went to New York 2 weeks ago, I spent 4 days there, and I lived there for 18 years, and man, I could walk the streets all day after by year 2, I was And 18 years, I was well versed to just, I could cruise through that city, no problem, for hours, all day, weeks, no problem. Didn't have to leave I don't have to leave Manhattan or Brooklyn. I went out there for 4 days. I couldn't last another day. I couldn't, and it wasn't a problem. It was beautiful. It's incredible. All the city, all the opportunities, all the people. I love I love it all. And yet, just all these sources of energy running around that I had to feel out was just overwhelming for me.
Was it an overstimulation from everything, like people and the smells and the sights and whatever?
Oh yeah, or... but I'm always just the smells for sure. The smells for sure. The sounds, But definitely, most specifically, like I just feel when you walk by someone, your system is picking up every single thing around you. Whether like a radar, just like even though you might not pay attention to it, you on some level your system is picking up on it, and you get, by living there for a while, you get good at muting out the unimportant signals.
Yes. And
just picking up the important signals, like that. But if you're not well accustomed to that, you're not trained in that, then you're picking up all the signals, and then the radar is just popping with dots. Versus when you're there for a long time, there's 3 dots, and so therefore your energy can be more efficient. And I can't believe, I once was very efficient, and I was able to pick up the people that would come up on the radar. Now everyone comes up on the radar, and that's what made it overwhelming for me.
Yeah. I mean, like, during COVID, when you're sitting at home alone, you're not taking in a lot of other sensory information. So our bodies, like, morph and evolve, right, and change. Yep. And then now we're trying to go back out, and, like, it's a lot. It's a lot for our bodies to handle. I feel it especially. And even in remote work, again, like, most of my sensory experience is audio and visual. I'm not getting other, touch or smell or, like, movement. And that also presents an interesting opportunity in terms of, like, could technology in the future actually help us understand other senses or experience other senses more deeply if we are in these, like, remote work contexts, right? Don't get me wrong, I actually really love and value remote work, but holy moly, like, I have to really, like, retrain my body how to have a multisensory experience again.
Right. But at the same time, I do think that on the flip side, our ability to read in the screen has improved so much. Like, if you go before COVID, what you read on the Zoom room, or in the screen, versus what you can communicate and read off the other person now is that much more heightened, right?
Yes.
I'm like, it's a little bit... I think
so.
Because my camera shut down and now you have me on 2 wide shots, you see my whole body. That's kind of irregular for a Zoom call, right? Most of the calls are like 3 button up. So it's also in some sense kind of weird that you're seeing me full body. You can read me more in my body, body language. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
It's just something that I think and I kind of think of my children who, obviously we want to stay off the phones, but they were born, my son was born in COVID, and obviously his grandparents wanted to see him. And so from a young age, there's family right there on the screen. His relationship to the iPhone is like, what is that very important black box that has different sounds coming out of it, different voices, and different colors? And why is everyone respecting it so much? And why is everyone giving it so much time and attention? These kids must be wondering, why is that black box so important that it gets more attention or as much attention as I get?
Yeah.
And so therefore, those kids, as they grow up, they're going to be, their relationship to other humans and, more importantly, technology is going to be different than definitely how we grew up in our access to technology.
But the way they navigate the relationship to their family members, that first step is actually the device.
Yeah. I mean, part of me feels that we're subconsciously, not as a species, just preparing ourselves for intergalactic space travel. And part of that means that as humans, we cannot survive without connection and attachment. And we're just subsuming the attachment from physical proximity to this other thing. And so it enables us to ultimately be able to travel space, but still feeling emotionally connected, even though we're not physically proximate.
Yeah. I think a lot about the fact that I am part of the last generation on Earth that will remember life before the internet. And, like, that feels so profound. And I feel like, yes, I'm so grateful to live in this time, to be able to have a global community and friends like you know, who live in all parts of the world. And yet I long for more local friends and local community.
Well, when you say that, I can see you get a little emotional. I don't know if you are, but it felt like you did.
Mm-hmm.
At least what I could tell
feel
through the screen.
emotional about it. Yeah.
Does that impact your decision to have children or not?
Oh, I don't know if I've thought about that in much depth, but I think that it does make me long for family, you know, or a closeness, a kinship with people that are physically around me, you know, not a screen, but having more people in my life that I can physically see and go to and interact with, play games with, you know, go outside. And that is, you know, when I think about one of the best memories I had with my parents and with my dad, even with, you know, the infrequent time that I had with him growing up, were the moments where we were like in the backyard in our like above ground pool in Ohio, and like we were swimming, and like I miss that of being outside. And you go outside today, or if I even if I leave my phone and I go outside, like I'm still thinking about my phone. I'm still thinking about what's in my inbox, what messages are coming up.
Yeah.
You know, and I miss the freedom of the mind of just being outside and not having to think about the internet, you know. And yeah, it's so I kind of went on a tangent with your initial questions of children, but when I think about a future with children, like I do wonder, like, how can I, even with the children I have in my life from friends, like I'm always wondering, like, how can I maybe, I don't know, show them or teach them what life was like before the internet, because they won't know.
We humans are so good at adapting to change that we quickly take things for granted. Oh, it was always this way. It was always this way. You know, even the fact that my son, who's 4 now, tells me about how he wants to fly in space and take me with him. Like when I told that to my father, when I told that to my father and every generation before him, maybe not, but like definitely, every generation before him said they want to take their dad to space. That was a dream that was not going to happen. And now it very likely will be.
Yeah.
And very likely my son, if he does want to go to space, he's 4 now, in 25, 30 years, if he wants to go into space, he probably will, and it'll probably be goodbye, Pops, so see you later. But hey, we'll still be in touch via VR and haptic connection, and we'll feel each other via technology, but it'll be at a distance. You know, that is totally shifted, right? It's, you know, we can look at the moon and say, do you want to go there? You can. You know, at least if you believe everything Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, where they're putting their money and I mean, it just seems like definitely a possibility unlike any other time before in human history. So when he says that, it's just mind-boggling for me to think about, the technology and how it's shifting. And so then I want to take the children back into that time, but I'm not sure if they necessarily want to go back there.
Yeah, because that's the portal, right? It's the portal to a greater vastness of like, we can grasp the moon. We can go to the moon. We can go to space. We can travel instantly to these different places. So, yeah. But I think it does present the question of maybe, you know, it depends on how your kids grow up, right, and evolve, and kind of how their perspective changes and what experiences they'll have. But I do wonder what they may face in terms of like asking that question of like, what was life like before the internet, or like what am I missing out on that maybe I don't know about? And that would be an interesting question, I think, to pose.
My prediction is that we'll all be living in VR goggles, which will be epic. But the most epic experience will be going and sitting by a waterfall, because you won't be experiencing the megapixels of which is ultimately 0 and 1s. But if that's why a lot of very wealthy people are buying huge plots of land, because ultimately that will be worth a lot, because being able to go out into the woods and sit by the patterns of nature hopefully
Touch grass. Yeah.
touch grass and hear the wind. I mean, hopefully you're in a place where there's still clean nature, but that experience, if you're accustomed to being in the VR world, where basically everything you're ingesting is zeros and ones, because binary code, and ultimately it's zeros and ones, and you're just seeing really, even the 4K, it looks real, but it's still ultimately like numbers and code. Then going into nature and seeing that is just so much more complex. And that must be I think in the future it'll be like a psychedelic experience.
I think it's already becoming a psychedelic experience. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a resurgence of psychedelics and mushrooms in particular, right? But you hear more and more stories, and maybe it's because I live in the Pacific Northwest, I'm closer to it, but like of people going out in the woods on mushrooms and like, or foraging for that. And I think that's already emerging. And I also think as AI continues to become like a bigger part of the conversation, I think that we will desire for more, not just nature, but like human-made art, human-made communication and writing and all these things, right? That's my hope.
Because I come from the film world where, when I started, we filmed on film, which is celluloid, which is an organic compound. It's blown up sand. And then we moved into digital, which was binary. And there was different ways of filming a digital film versus actual film, because you put the celluloid into a roll of film and you could roll it for 1,000 feet, 11 minutes. So you could only film, maximum 11-minute scene before you put another roll. But there was this, if you watch something on film, projected on film, and you watch it digital, whether you know it or not, it feels different because the experience it captures, one is organic and one is digital. And so the metaphysical energy is lost.
That's a really beautiful analogy, actually, of what's happening with AI now. Like, it's a beautiful analogy to connect it to.
So what's the place for us humans, you think? Like, what is unique? That's what I've been asking, is like, what's left for us then? If AI is going to do all the cognitive, it puts more of the impetus on us and what makes us unique.
It does. It
so
does.
So where do you go with that question?
Yeah. I think what makes us unique is two things. Well, many things, but two things I'll bring up here is like our ability to ask questions. Like, yes, a computer and AI can give us immediate, instant answers, but it's in the discovery, in the process of asking that question that is really, truly, I think, what makes us human. And we bring these questions to the table based on our human experience. At the end of the day, an AI, no matter how advanced it is, will never have a human experience.
Well, what is the human experience then?
The way in which we relate to one another, the challenges that we face in life, the fact that we may move to different locations or experience different cultures, expand, our perspectives, giving birth, like all of these things are not necessarily something that AI, even if it can be really advanced, right, and do a lot of things for us, it's not going to experience those aspects of it. So I kind of hold on to that. I also think in the relationship part, another thing that makes us human is to be treated human by other humans. And I think we're also going to be longing for stronger relationships with one another and treating one another like human beings as, AI continues to advance. And what that means for me is just really having relationships, deep relationships where you're sitting down and listening to one another, embracing those differences and supporting one another through a lot of, I think, the big changes that are going to continue to come forward for us.
But do you think we're going to need each other more or less? Because I feel like with AI, we're not going to need each other more. Maybe emotionally, but in terms of get things done and in some sense, emotional connection is derived from some sort of discomfort, because you either have to be vulnerable in your love and admiration for someone or vulnerable in accepting that there's a conflict. And so if you want to avoid that discomfort, you just can easily stay away from people. And then in the past, we had to be connected to people because we had to get things done. But if I have a robot or I have an AI can get it done, I don't have to deal with a human. Right. Well, then, boom. So how, in the world of AI, are we actually going to be leaning into connecting with other people more? Or is it going to be easier to disconnect? Because I feel it's going to be easier to disconnect.
It is, and it will be easier to disconnect, but I think the longing for human connection will grow. And so how that manifests is yet to be determined. I can feel it.
No, but we see it now with the increase in mental health and loneliness. The
I can
loneliness
feel
with
it even with
pandemic.
remote work, like people wanting to connect, in person or have longer conversations with one another. It's just, yeah. I think the thing though that does make me concerned is that in the process of the fact that it is and will be easier to disconnect, will we be able to sort of, again, going back to self-reflection, sit down with the feelings of longing that we might, have in the void of that disconnection. So I hope so, but there is a danger there that we may not even really notice it or take the time to notice that longing that may be there.
Man, I just feel like loneliness is such a fundamental part to the human experience.
It is. And even before all this AI chatter, like we were already, I think, living in a lot of ways, especially I think in the US, like in a culture of independence, and
In the US, for sure, yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And individualism. And I feel like my hope at least is that we continue to ask that question of like, where is the imbalance in terms of how we relate to one another? And I think what I witness a lot is the imbalance of independence versus interdependence. This is actually something that Monica Jane talks a lot about. She was at Unfinished Festival, and she's been doing a lot of great research and work on loneliness called Shared Our Loneliness. I think that question will continue to come up. But the easier it gets to disconnect from one another, the more relevant that question becomes. And my hope is that we keep being loud about it.
Can we double click on that? What I heard was the distinction between independence and interdependence.
Mm-hmm.
Can you double click on that? I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah. Again, this is something that I've learned from Monica Jane from Sharing Our Loneliness. But for me, the way I interpret it is asking for, going back to questions, asking for help, asking for support, knowing that it's okay to not have all the answers. I find myself in a lot of situations and rooms where people feel pressured to know the answer, to have the solution at hand, to deliver results, right? Especially in a business context. And so that, I think, can drive us further into individualism and independence, when interdependence is more of like, I don't know what to do here. How, I could use some support here. Can you support me on this? What do you think about it? Just asking more questions to have a dialogue with one another. Independence, there's not a lot of dialogue, conversation, right? It's more of a one-sided, like, I'm trying, to say what the answer is. I may feel pressured by it, but like interdependence is dialogue. It's conversation. It's holding space for that. It's you and I having this conversation today. There's an interdependence at play here, right? Of you and I listening to one another, bouncing back and forth ideas and questions.
Like the AI nodes, an AI node, a system, every node, when it learns one node, individual node learns something, it then shares that knowledge with all the other nodes, and the whole system then is upgraded. So that's why it's learning so fast, right? Because when it learns, the whole system learns, and pop.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we were all AI and all the kids were connected, then when one kid in Japan learned a sentence in Japanese, then every other kid on the planet would learn the same thing in that moment. And you could just imagine what would happen. Like, does that make sense? Because they're all connected in the same system. But we humans are not created that way at all. And we learn actually in different rates, in different perspectives. We learn different things. The same thing can happen in front of the two different people and you have three different opinions. But I think that there's an opportunity there. It's in the differences that there could be a magic that we can reveal, that something can be revealed that's not there if we all see it the same way. And there's where I think the impetus is on us as humans to tap into that. But that means that we have to be better communicators. And really, we have to be better listeners. And everything we're doing these days is all the media that we're watching, all the content we're watching is not training us to be better listeners. It's training us to be better speakers and barkers of our own opinions. I know that's one reason why I've jumped into the hog pit of doing this podcast thing, is to like spend time in a space that we both love, which is talking to people and asking questions. and listening, even though I just talked a lot. But you know, that's like the space is when you talk about like taking our future generations and giving them back to the nature, and you know, putting them into previous experiences before technology really took over
Yeah.
like every
Mm-hmm.
way being of our lives much
Mm-hmm.
deeper than it feels like ever before. I think part of that is in the conversations with people, and what I mean by it's actually listening. It's
Mm-hmm.
really just listening, asking questions and just listening.
Yeah. And part of that aspect of what makes us human is, being treated human by other humans. Listening is the first step to that. Listening to each other.
So let me ask you, what do you think? And this is really like the profound. This is the current question I have for the podcast. Is kind of driving the whole thing, which is, what do you think life is designed you for?
Oh, what a question. I don't fully know the answer yet because
Yeah.
I'm still alive and still trying to figure it out. I think life has presented opportunities to me that have perhaps invited me to engage in the question of where is the imbalance. Given that I was born in the time and place that I was, the internet and technology is a big aspect of my own shaping as a human being. And so I naturally kind of gravitate towards asking that question in that particular realm. But the way in which I guess I am starting to know that is a thing that the universe is presenting to me is when I see a change in other people, going back to the Google Maps example of like seeing the colleagues that I was working with in the US, like a change in perspective that they had and a change in the relationship that they had to their work and to the technology itself was something that honestly I can't quite articulate. It's a feeling that it's an experience I witnessed, and I can't quite articulate how deep that impact felt at that time. The taxes project, like hearing the feedback from people of like, why wasn't this a thing all along? Tells me that imbalance has been pretty deep for a long time. And so I try to, when the universe presents those opportunities to me, I try to embrace them and see like, where is this taking me? I don't know, but I am starting to understand that I believe that's maybe why I'm here, is to ask that question and see where it takes me.
So thank you so much for that. Where are you putting your energy these days?
It's like in conversations like this is one of them, engaging in more dialogue with people, continuing to interview and moderate festivals or one-on-one conversations. Different people that I meet that I've been asking, like, yeah, let's record a conversation together, about this thing. Like that gives me a lot of energy just to listen to one another and know that we don't have all the answers, I think is an important part of this, instead of just barking and trying to like influence, right? Just being human together. That gives me energy. I think another thing is continuing to like, again, ask this question of like, how can I bring balance back into my life with regards to this isolation period? That's been on my mind a lot. Lately I've been taking a class, a clay wheel throwing class. And
wait, what? Clay wheel? What?
Yeah. I've been throwing clay on wheel, like taking a class about how to do that.
Spinning it around, like making bowls.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm
That
still
must be
learning.
amazing.
Yeah,
I hear that's amazing.
It's really hard, but it's something that allows me again to like get out of, being in the same space all the time, but also just touching clay, grasping at something. So I'm also like in this journey of like really actively trying to kind of get away from screens so that I can understand life outside of it a bit. And then also reconnecting to family has been a big theme for me this year. Helping my dad out in particular. He went through a pretty major medical procedure a couple months ago, where he had to get metal kind of plates placed into his spine. He was at risk of becoming paralyzed. I think largely not just for aging, but because of the work he did for so long. And so I've been really thinking a lot about that and trying to be there for my parents, and also seeing how modern technology and all the healthcare workers and doctors, like how amazing they are in terms of that So I don't know. It's a lot of different avenues that I'm taking.
But how's your dad?
He's doing well. He is kind of like relearning how to walk at this point. He's going out on daily walks in the neighborhood with like sometimes he'll take a walker or a cane. He's 63, and unfortunately he is not of age to receive Medicare in the US. So that's been something my family and I have been navigating.
I mean, it's young. 63 is
It's young. Yeah.
Young to get a surgery like that. It's heavy duty.
Yeah.
So he spent, you could tell the physical toil of working on the line.
Yes. The story continues, the deindustrialization story continues on, right? And so it's been interesting to sort of navigate that with my family.
If I could give you the deck and you pulled out the one thing I'd want him to have to answer, or for you to ask him, because the deck, oh my God. Has he told you the last time he was proud of you?
He says that he and my mom both say that they're proud of me a lot, but...
Yeah? For what? What do they say they're proud of you for? Because I'm sure they do. I'm just wondering what it is.
Oddly, they're not usually specific about it. They're just like more general about it. But it's
I'm
like
sure
in
they're proud
moments
of you.
where I think it's in moments where they're just sort of seeing what I'm doing, or I don't know, like where my life is now. And I think my mom often says like I never imagined this. Like I could have never imagined this. And I think a large part maybe she says that honestly because they were dealing with parenting a child while the internet was happening, right? Like they had no idea how that was going to disrupt and change and the family, So I think that's a huge element to it.
No, from reading the How Deindustrialization, that article, I can tell that you know how proud they are of you.
What makes you say that?
Because you wouldn't write that in that beautiful way, and you end with one of the beautiful sentences that so touched me. Is like, what's important is that we were in the same place at the same time. And I think underlying that whole thing is no doubt that it feels great when they tell you. And it's really nice when they're specific about it, because that anchors it in more. And that's why I would love it if life brought you that opportunity for them to express it and for you to receive it. But I know that deep down, you know it. That's what I read that's what I got.
Yeah,
when I read that.
From them. I feel it from them, for sure. Yeah.
I think that's clear. And I think even that article is in service to is definitely in service to your dad and your mom obviously too, but your dad in terms of the example that he set for you. And also telling you at the end, what was the lesson that he told you at the end? Because he had a lesson that he got from when he was carrying the golf clubs in the golf club, but he told you a different lesson. He didn't say to follow that lesson. He followed that lesson that led him down the path, but then he looks at you and he says what? He tells you something different that you write about in that article.
Yeah. He would often tell me like, and he would say this with like exhaustion in his body, that like, Lauren, at the end of the day, find a career or vocation, however you want to call it, that won't consume you. And that is maybe the thing that brings me to the question of where is the imbalance? Now that we've been talking about this, I'm like having this realization with you in this podcast. Wow. Okay.
Oh, wow. That was good. I didn't realize that either. Oh, my God. Totally. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Oh, my gosh.
It is.
Thanks for jumping in. Thanks for jumping on with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun and so meaningful.
Yeah, this is really good.
Guts is a Skin Deep media production. The show is produced by Sundus Hassan Noli, video by Dane Montezan, with editorial support from Ants Cabral and executive produced by me, Topaz Adizes. Special thanks to all the guests who showed guts, without whom there will be no getting under the skin. Interested in joining our community and following this journey? Visit guts.podcast on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And check out our website, theskindeep.com, for in-depth conversation card games that create the space for connection, intimacy, and deeper conversation. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Until next time, keep having the guts to get under the skin.